My name is Ava, and for as long as I can remember, people have looked at me and my twin sister Arya like we were some kind of miracle. Everywhere we went, strangers would stop my parents with wide-eyed grins and ask, "Are they identical?" Cameras flashed at birthdays and Christmases as though just the sight of us sitting side by side was magical enough to be captured and remembered forever. Teachers loved pointing out how rare it was to have two of the same in one classroom, and kids at school treated us like a matching set, almost like dolls that came packaged together. We were supposed to be inseparable, unbreakable, best friends born under the same heartbeat, and for a long time, I believed that. Arya and I wore matching dresses until we were old enough to decide otherwise, shared toys, swapped secrets, and made promises about never turning on each other. People would gush about how lucky we were, how incredible it must feel to always have a built-in best friend. They called us two halves of one soul, and I desperately wanted that to be true. But here's what pictures and polite smiles never show. Envy doesn't need a reason, and love doesn't stop betrayal. Behind the perfectly mirrored smiles, there was a constant tug of war. I ignored it at first, convinced that the silent tension I felt was just me being overly sensitive. After all, how could my sister, my twin, my other half, ever see me as anything but her equal? The truth is, she didn't. And I learned the hard way that when people see two identical faces, it's frighteningly easy for one of those faces to disappear. My twin didn't just want attention. Eventually, she wanted my entire life, and she almost succeeded. Growing up with Arya felt like living in a shadow that never took a break. From the very beginning, people gravitated toward her. She had this effortless charm, big laughs that filled rooms, dramatic stories that kept everyone hooked, and a confidence that made adults clap their hands and say, "She's going to be something special." It wasn't that I was quiet or boring. It was just that Arya had a way of shining that made my own glow look dim in comparison. When we were kids, I thought it was normal. She'd cut in front of me when someone asked us a question, and I'd bite my tongue because she was my twin. She'd tell teachers that she was the one who came up with the idea for a class project we worked on together, and instead of correcting her, I smiled tightly while the teacher praised her creativity. It stung, but I told myself, who cares? We're the same. If she wins, I win too. But that was a lie I only believed because I wanted it to be true. The comparison started to wear me down. Teachers called her the outspoken one, and me, the quieter twin. Some even forgot my name and called me Arya's sister. At home, it wasn't much better. Our parents adored Arya's confidence and humor. She'd tell some exaggerated story about recess, acting out every detail like she was on a stage, and they'd lean in with laughter and admiration. When I tried to share something, their attention would drift, like I was the commercial break before Arya's next big performance. Even when I did succeed, Arya had a way of snatching it. In 3rd grade, I won a small art contest at school. It was the first ribbon I'd ever earned, and I remember feeling like maybe, just maybe, someone saw me for me. At dinner, I shyly held it out, waiting for the smiles and congratulations. Arya cut in with her practiced grin and said, "Oh yeah, that was our project. I helped her pick the colors." It wasn't true. I'd worked on it alone. But my parents laughed, ruffled her hair, and called us a team. Just like that, something special that belonged to me turned into another shared glory. That leaned more on her than me. It was little lies like that, carefully placed and perfectly timed. If I slipped and scraped my knee, she'd run crying to mom first, saying she was so upset at seeing me hurt, and I'd watch as she got the comfort that should have been mine. If I brought home a good grade, Arya would sigh and moan about how she felt pressured to keep up. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't about my achievement, but about making sure Arya didn't feel left behind. At first, I brushed it off as sibling stuff, rivalry, harmless jealousy, but the older we got, the clearer it became that this wasn't harmless at all. Arya wasn't just competing, she was making sure I stayed beneath her. Every ounce of attention I got, she found a way to redirect. Every spark of pride I felt, she snuffed out or claimed for herself. Sometimes, late at night, I'd stare at her sleeping and wonder if maybe she just didn't like me. But then morning came and she'd smile that dazzling twin sister smile, and I'd convince myself I was overthinking. I didn't yet know those small betrayals were only practice runs, rehearsals for the day she decided to take far more than credit or affection. Looking back, the warning signs were everywhere. High school was supposed to be a fresh start. For years, I'd gotten used to being the other twin, the one teachers brushed past and our relatives forgot to ask questions about. But as we walked into those big hallways with their buzzing fluorescent lights and thousands of new faces, I remember thinking maybe, just maybe, I could create an identity of my own. To my quiet shock, it started working. I dove into academics in a way that actually paid off. My biology teacher noticed the detail in my lab reports, and suddenly I was getting called on in class. Not as Arya's sister, but as Ava, the girl who actually had smart things to say. For the first time, my answers mattered enough to to be written on the board. It felt like a tiny piece of the spotlight had shifted away from Arya and onto me, and I couldn't lie. It felt incredible. It wasn't just schoolwork. Friendships started forming naturally, people who laughed at my sarcasm, who wanted to hang out with me, not just the louder twin. Then there was Justin, my first crush, the boy who made me blush every time he flashed his crooked smile in my direction. He told me once, half joking, that I was the smarter twin with prettier eyes, and I nearly combusted on the spot. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking at my reflection and thinking of second place. I was thinking that maybe I could be someone worth seeing, but Arya noticed too, and instead of cheering me on, she tightened her grip like a hand around my throat. It started small, pointed comments around my friends. "Oh, Ava never tells the whole story," she'd say with that sweet-laced bitterness, planting seeds of doubt. If I laughed at something in the cafeteria, she'd roll her eyes just loud enough for others to notice, as if I was trying too hard. She had this skill, this terrible, perfect skill, of dismantling me without anyone realizing she'd done it. When Justin and I began talking more, Arya suddenly showed up beside him. She'd slip into conversations, touch his arm, laugh too loud at his jokes. It didn't stop there. One day, I walked into school to hushed whispers and sideways glances. Later, I found out Arya had told people I only liked Justin because he liked her, and that I was pathetically trying to compete. It was a lie, but it stuck like gum to my shoe. I couldn't shake it. No matter what I said, that's when the rumors started. Not big, flashy lies, but subtle, believable ones. She told one girl that I'd gossiped about her boyfriend. She whispered to another that I'd cheated on a test. None of it was true, but the damage wasn't in the details. It was in the doubt. Suddenly, people hesitated before trusting me, and every achievement I'd earned was dragged through invisible questions. Did I deserve it, or was I just sneaky like my sister suggested? I tried to confront her once, after school, my voice shaking with anger. "Why are you doing this? You're supposed to be my sister." She looked at me with those identical eyes, the same eyes I saw in the mirror, and smiled like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. "Relax, Ava. You're imagining things. Don't be paranoid." Her words stung more than the rumors did. She twisted the knife by suggesting the problem was me, my insecurity, my imagination. Inside, though, I knew I wasn't imagining it. Arya had lived her entire life in the spotlight, and the first time I dared to step into it, she set fire to the stage beneath my feet. And yet, as much as it hurt, I wasn't ready to give up. There was a part of me, shaky, fragile, but determined, that whispered I couldn't let her erase me again. I didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. Everything truly snapped the year I was awarded something I never thought I'd get, a scholarship that could completely change my future. It was a prestigious academic award tied to a summer program at a university, something that would set me up for college and maybe even open doors I hadn't dreamed possible before. When the letter came, I almost dropped it, shaking as I read my name in official print. My name, not Arya's sister, not the quiet twin, but mine. For once, life was finally acknowledging that I existed as an individual. I remember running into the living room, tears in my eyes, holding the letter high. My parents cheered, hugged me, congratulated me, but it lasted less than a minute before Arya reached for the paper and scanned it herself, her smile tight, her jaw twitching. "Wow," she said, in that voice that sounded sweet to everyone else, but I knew as venom. "That's really great, Ava. I mean, it's not like you're the only one with brains. Aituko would have gotten that too, if I'd tried." It was the first time I felt the shift. This wasn't just jealousy anymore, it was possession. At first, the sabotage was subtle. Friends I'd vented to about the program suddenly grew cold toward me. One girl asked why I'd been bragging about rejecting other offers when, in reality, I hadn't said anything like that. Then Justin, yes, the same Justin I'd been falling for, barely looked at me in the hall. When I approached him, his face hardened. "Why are you leading two people on, Ava? That's messed up." I froze, my mouth open. Two people? I had no idea what he meant until later that night when screenshots started circulating of me sending flirty texts to another guy. But the profile picture wasn't me. It was Arya. She had made a fake account in my name and was messaging people, deliberately dragging my reputation through the mud. It didn't stop at flirty texts either. Messages full of cruel, gossipy comments from me popped up everywhere. Things about my closest friends, teachers, even about Justin himself, all designed to make me look like some two-faced, arrogant liar. I tried explaining it wasn't me, that someone had created the account, but everyone knew the truth we couldn't escape. Arya and I looked identical. "It has to be you," they said. "Your twin wouldn't do that." That was her deadliest weapon, the fact that no one wanted to believe she was capable of cruelty. It escalated faster than I could keep up. Just weeks before the summer program was supposed to begin, an email from me landed in the coordinator's inbox, saying I wasn't interested anymore and offering the spot to my sister who's just as qualified. Guess who conveniently showed up for the interview? Arya, dressed in my clothes, hair styled like mine, practicing my handwriting so the forged documents looked perfect. She didn't just take the chance. She She literally stepped into my life while I was left scrambling to explain why I suddenly wasn't going. At home, I begged my parents to believe me. It wasn't me. She's pretending. Don't you see what's happening? But Arya had already played her role with them beautifully, painting me as the unstable, jealous sibling who couldn't handle her success. She cried in front of them, actual tears, saying she felt guilty because I didn't want her to share her good fortune. And like fools, they believed her. They didn't see the glint of victory in her eyes when she peeked at me across the living room. And as if that wasn't enough, she started closing her grip around Justin too. All those moments he and I shared, the laughs, the secret smiles, they became hers when she leaned in and whispered to him, "I've always been the one you liked, haven't I?" He fell for it. I saw them together not long after, walking close, her hand brushing his the way I used to. It broke me in a way I can't put into words. It was like I vanished. Everything I'd worked for, every bit of confidence I'd finally built, she claimed like it had always been hers to begin with. Standing in that nightmare, the cruelest part wasn't losing the scholarship or Justin. It was watching how easily everyone believed her version of me over, well, me. Arya didn't just want the spotlight anymore. She wanted to live my life, and for a terrifying moment, it seemed like people wanted her to. I used to think the worst thing in the world was being invisible, but I was wrong. Being erased, watching someone else take your name, your face, your opportunities, and convince everyone that they deserved it more, that was something far crueler. And that's exactly what life became for me after Arya's betrayal sank its claws into everything I valued. The scholarship I'd earned, gone. Friends I'd trusted, gone. Justin, who had once made me feel like I mattered, wouldn't even look me in the eye anymore. Hallways that used to feel like possibilities now felt like traps. I walked through school hearing my own name attached to stories I didn't recognize, twisted tales of me being a liar, a flirt, a hypocrite, an attention seeker. It was like a black hole had opened, and every decent thing about me was being swallowed up, while Arya stood outside of it, smiling like the sun. I tried so many times to clear my name. The first time, I begged my closest friend Emily to believe me. I showed her my phone, proving the fake account wasn't mine, but Arya had already gotten to her first. "Ava's just jealous," she'd said. "She can't stand that I'm better at some things." Emily nodded politely as I spoke, but I saw the doubt in her eyes. She didn't say the words, but I could hear them anyway. It's easier to believe Arya. Teachers who used to praise me now eyed me with quiet disappointment. One accused me of plagiarizing an essay because it just didn't seem like my style. That was the same week a copy of my draft accidentally went missing from my binder. I didn't even argue. I just took the failing grade with my jaw clenched, already knowing who was behind it. But what could I say? How could I prove it? At home, things weren't any better. If anything, they were worse. My parents started labeling me dramatic whenever I tried to speak up. One night at dinner, I finally blurted out, "She's manipulating all of you. She took the scholarship. She's pretending to be me. Don't you see it?" My dad sighed, like I was exhausting him, and said flatly, "Ava, this has to stop. You sound jealous. Your sister worked hard, and it's not fair for you to drag her down because you feel left out." My mom's eyes filled with pity, which somehow felt even worse than anger. Pity meant she thought I was broken, not believable. And Arya? God, she thrived in that moment. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand delicately, saying, "I love you, Ava. I don't know why you think I'd ever do those things." Her voice cracked with expertly manufactured tears. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table, smash plates, anything to make them wake up. But I just stayed frozen, swallowing the words because shouting wouldn't make a difference. I walked away from that table shaking, wondering if maybe I was losing my mind. Days blurred into weeks. My phone stopped lighting up with notifications because nobody texted me anymore. I sat at lunch alone, nibbling at food that tasted like cardboard while laughter from my old group echoed a few tables away, laughter Arya now filled. Justin and Arya became a thing officially, and the first time I saw them holding hands in the hallway, I felt something inside my chest collapse so hard I thought I might actually physically crack in two. Everywhere I turned, doors slammed shut. I stopped staying after school because I couldn't handle the whispers. I stopped opening my mouth in class because even when I was right, the teacher never seemed to trust me. I stopped trying to explain myself at home because my parents had already built their version of the truth, and in that version, I was the bitter twin, the problem child. Eventually, I stopped trying altogether. I spent hours in my room staring at the ceiling, letting silence swallow me whole. It was easier than facing everyone who saw me as a fraud. I wondered constantly if I was worth anything at all. Maybe Arya was right, that she was the better twin, the real one, and I was just some extra copy no one really needed. The thought chewed away at me quietly, and the worst part was I started believing it. There's a point where pain stops burning and just goes numb, like your body has decided it doesn't want to fight anymore. That's that's where I landed, curled up in the dark, convinced that somehow my life had been stolen, and nobody but me realized it. My twin hadn't just taken my opportunities, she'd taken my identity. And what was Ali? Didn't even feel like a person anymore. After weeks of letting myself sink into that hollow emptiness, something shifted. It wasn't loud or dramatic, it was late at night, staring at the ceiling, when I realized I had two choices: let Arya erase me forever, or claw my way back into existence. And no matter how crushed I felt, no matter how badly everyone doubted me, a spark of anger burned somewhere deep inside me. Why should she get away with everything? Why should I let her write the story of who I was? She might have stolen my voice in everyone else's eyes, but in my bones I still knew the truth, and I decided it was time to prove it. The first step was observation. I forced myself to pay attention, looking at Arya not through the lens of a sister I wished I had, but as an opponent. She was smart, no one could deny it. She covered her tracks like a professional liar, but she also got sloppy when she got too confident, and lately she carried herself like she was untouchable. That arrogance would be her downfall. At school, I started subtly stalking my own shadow. Every time she used my name in a way that didn't feel right, I noted it down. Anytime she messaged someone as me, I begged the recipient to send me a screenshot before Arya could talk them out of it. Some ignored me, but a few hesitated long enough to show me proof. Slowly, tiny fragments of her deception began to build into a puzzle only I knew existed. Then came the overheard conversations. When she thought I wasn't around, she spilled her venom with startling carelessness. I lingered in the hallway one afternoon while she laughed with a friend, mocking how pathetic I looked sitting alone. "It's almost too easy," she bragged. My phone shook in my hand as I recorded just enough to catch her exact words. For the first time in months, evidence was mine. At home, I began keeping track of thin GS she borrowed. Clothes went missing from my closet, shirts I'd later see her wearing, bragging they were mine. That sounds trivial, but I kept receipts. Literal receipts of my purchases, side-by-side photos proving I owned them first. It felt ridiculous at times, but I knew the bigger picture mattered more. Every stolen scrap was part of the story that no one else wanted to hear. And then, the texts. Arya was bold enough to log into my email on the family computer once, forgetting the system-stored activity history. One night, while everyone else was asleep, I dug into it, screenshotting the account switches, the timestamps showing exactly when she had pretended to be me. My hands trembled as I saved the files into a hidden folder, backing them up onto a flash drive. My proof wasn't complete yet, but I was finally building the case no one could deny. It felt like becoming a detective in my own crime story, and every clue reignited the fire I thought I'd lost. Don't get me wrong, it was terrifying. At any point, she could have caught me snooping. At any point, she could have orchestrated another lie to bury me deeper. But every day that passed, I grew stronger. Pain slowly twisted into fuel. Every humiliation she'd forced on me became another reason to keep pushing. The best part? She had no idea. She still thought I was broken, bitter, sitting in the ashes of the life she stole. She wasn't watching me closely anymore because she believed she'd already won. That blind confidence gave me space to prepare, to sharpen my plan until it was solid as steel. I didn't know exactly how I'd reveal the truth yet, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't make the mistake of confronting her too soon again. This time, I would wait until there was nowhere for her to slither. No lie she could spin fast enough to escape. I would drag her cruelty into the light with undeniable proof. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't just surviving, I was fighting back, and deep down, I knew to seal it. Reckoning was coming. The perfect opportunity came almost like fate. Our school was hosting an awards assembly, one of those big events where they handed out honors for academics, sports, leadership, basically parading all the future stars across the stage. And of course, Arya made sure she'd be front and center. Not only was she still pretending she'd earned the scholarship I'd lost, but she also positioned herself as this shining example of integrity and leadership. The irony nearly choked me, but in that moment I realized something. If I wanted everyone to hear the truth, I needed an audience that couldn't ignore it. But a stage bigger than our dinner table arguments, louder than whispered hallway rumors. The assembly, under fluorescent gymnasium lights and an entire school community watching, became my battlefield. The day of, I was a bundle of nerves. My hands shook so badly I thought I'd drop my phone before anything even began. But that little flash drive hidden safely in my pocket reminded me why I was there. Every screenshot, every timestamp, every audio clip. I had it all ready. This wasn't going to be another shouting match drowned out by her tears. This time I had undeniable proof. When her name was called and she stepped across the stage, the applause was deafening. Justin was in the crowd clapping. My parents were practically beaming. And for the briefest second, I feared they'd all be blinded forever by her carefully painted mask. But as she took the microphone to say a few words about working hard, believing in yourself, and staying true to your values, something in me snapped. I couldn't wait a second longer. I stood up in the middle of the gym. My voice wavered at first, but it carried enough to cut through the claps still fading away. She's lying. The room went deathly silent. 1,000 eyes turned to me as Arya froze mid-smile. Whew, her fingers tightening around the microphone. She didn't earn that scholarship, I said, louder this time. She pretended to be me, and I can prove it. Gasps rippled across the bleachers. Teachers shifted in their seats, uncomfortable. My parents' shocked faces burned into me, but I forced myself to keep going. With shaking hands but steady anger, I pulled out my phone, hooked it to the projector system I'd begged the AV tech to give me access to earlier. One by one, I displayed the receipts, screenshots of messages from me that originated on Arya's devices, audio clips of her bragging to friends about how easy it was to replace me, the activity logs from our family computer showing her logging into my accounts. The entire gym sat frozen as piece after piece of her web unraveled. And then, the final strike, the email to the scholarship program, written in my voice but sent from her IP address. The evidence was so airtight it felt surreal, even to me. For the first time, it wasn't my word against hers. It was the truth in black and white. Arya's face crumbled. That polished mask, the one she'd maintained for years, cracked under the weight of exposure. She tried to laugh it off at first, claiming I'd faked everything, but her voice shook and her eyes darted too quickly, desperate for escape. Then she tried tears, big dramatic sobs about being compared to me her whole life, trying to twist herself into the victim. But the crowd wasn't buying it anymore. Teachers exchanged looks. Friends who'd abandoned me now stared at her with wide, horrified eyes. Justin's expression in particular was carved in stone, betrayal mixed with disbelief. For once, I didn't even need to yell. I just stood there, calm in my fury, letting the truth echo louder than her excuses. And in that packed gymnasium, with every mask stripped away, the twin who'd stolen everything from me was finally seen for who she really was. The silence after the assembly was almost worse than the chaos during it. When the bell rang and students assultad eat into the halls, no one looked at Arya the same way anymore. The spell she'd woven for years had shattered, and now she was just standing there, red-eyed and trembling, stripped of that shiny mask she always wore. People whispered, but this time the whispers weren't about me. They were about her. Did you see the proof? I can't believe she did that. All this time we thought Ava was lying. For the first time, the weight shifted off my shoulders. But instead of feeling light, I felt hollow. Winning didn't feel like triumph. It felt like trudging out of a burning building, covered in ash, knowing nothing inside survived. At home, everything exploded. My parents couldn't look at me at first, too ashamed of how easily they'd believed Arya's version of events. My mother cried, apologizing over and over, saying she didn't know how blinded she'd been. My father tried to rationalize it, talking about pressure and the complicated twin dynamic, as if betrayal could be explained away like a science project gone wrong. And Arya? She barely left her room. When she did, it was with downcast eyes and a silence so heavy it sucked the air out of the house. Consequences came quickly. The scholarship program withdrew the offer completely when they realized what happened. Arya not only lost her shot at taking my place, but the news spread fast through teachers and administrators. Her reputation at school crashed overnight. Opportunities dried up. Friends dropped her. Even Justin, who'd once chosen her over me, walked away, disgust plain on his face when he realized how deep her manipulation went. But here's the thing no one tells you. Even when liars are exposed, the scars they leave don't magically disappear. I couldn't flip a switch and feel whole again. Trusting my parents became difficult. I replayed every moment they doubted me, every sigh, every pitying look, and I wondered how they could have cast me aside so easily. I felt guilty too. Guilty for letting Arya walk all over me for years. Guilty for not finding my fight sooner. Forgiving her wasn't even on the horizon. Forgiving myself was hard enough. She tried to talk to me once, 2 weeks after everything blew up. Her voice was small, almost childlike when she whispered, "I didn't mean for it to go so far." But I just looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I didn't believe a single word. Whether she meant it or not didn't matter. The damage was already done. People love stories with clean endings. Villain exposed, justice served, protagonist triumphant. But my reality was messier. Yes, she faced the fallout. Yes, people finally saw me. But nothing erased the years I spent questioning my worth. Nothing gave me back the innocence of believing family always has your back. Trust, once shattered, never looks quite the same. And deep down, I knew some wounds wouldn't close, at least not completely. In the months after everything came crashing down, I realized survival wasn't enough. I needed to actually start living again. For so long, my identity identity had been tied to Arya, either as her reflection or her rival, that I'd forgotten I was allowed to exist independently. With her mask broken and my truth finally in the open, I had no excuse to hide anymore. So I started small. I reconnected with the few friends who hadn't completely cut me off, and to my surprise, some of them apologized. They admitted they'd believed the lies because it was easier than questioning the girl who always dazzled them. It hurt hearing it, but it also gave me closure. I wasn't invisible, just overshadowed. And now, for the first time, I could step into the light without asking permission. School slowly became bearable again. Teachers who'd doubted me went out of their way to encourage me. It didn't erase the months of humiliation, but it reminded me that my hard work still mattered. I joined new clubs, made connections with people who had no preconceived idea of which twin I was. And maybe the best part? Nobody compared me to her anymore. I was just Ava. Plain, flawed, determined Ava. For once, that was enough. Love came in an unexpected way. No, not with Justin. He was part of the past. A painful lesson I needed to learn. Later, someone else came along. Someone who saw me without the baggage of Arya's games. He liked me for my quirks, my awkward jokes, the little things I always thought were forgettable. With him, I didn't feel like I had to perform or compete. I just got to be myself, authentic and unafraid. It showed me that love isn't about winning someone over. It's about finally being seen. The biggest redemption, though, wasn't the friendships or even the new relationship. It was looking in the mirror and recognizing my own worth. Arya tried to erase me, but ironically, her betrayal forced me to build an identity stronger than her lies could ever be. I realized I was more than the quieter twin, more than the background character in her show. I had my own story, my own voice, and no one could take that from me, not even someone who wore the same face. Do I forgive her? Not completely, not yet, and maybe I never will. But forgiveness isn't the same as freedom. Freedom is knowing her shadow no longer defines me. Freedom is living each day with the quiet certainty that even when someone tries to steal your identity, they can never be you. Because your life, your choices, your soul is untouchable. I survived the betrayal of the person closest to me. I stood on the edge of disappearing, and I fought to exist again. And now, I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. Finally whole in the truth that my life can only ever belong to me.